Hello there and welcome once again to my little arty corner of YouTube. Although I've many little arty corners around various social media and a blog and what have you. Details for those I pop in the description box if you're interested in finding me. It's not much of a treasure hunt. You can either find me as Angela Porter or Artwyrd or both because they work just about everywhere. Artwyrd because it's my business name. Angela because that's the name I use and want to be known by people. So, two reasons. Complicated, I know. I trust you're doing fine and well. And first, I'd just like to say a lovely thank you for all the beautiful feedback I've been having for the last couple of videos, and especially the shell one yesterday. I wasn't quite sure whether it's something people wanted. I know somebody asked for it, but hopefully it's really helpful. And I'm going to carry on today with one while I get my head together about what else to do, because I can be a bit of a ditzy mare, to say the least. So, well ditzy. So we'll see what happens. So I trust you're all doing fine and well. Well, the other thing is a big thank you for all of those of you who've subscribed. Thank you so much. If you're new here and you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. It's free, it doesn't cost anything. Just a little bit of energy to click on that, not thumbs up, on the subscribe button. But clicking on the thumbs up button would be a good one as well with likes. And of course, comments are welcome, especially constructive ones and suggestions for content that are within the feel of my channel. So, which is basically, I'd love to help people gain confidence in drawing, to have a go at drawing, to make use of a sketchbook just for your own pleasure. You don't necessarily have to show what you do to other people. And bear in mind that I've certainly been focusing on drawing for 20 years or more, but I've drawn all my life, even when I believed I couldn't do it. So I know that lack of confidence. I know that lack of self-belief, but I also understand, and I want you to understand, that drawing or creating art isn't about recreating a photograph on paper. It's about expressing yourself. And my favourite form of expressing myself is with whimsical, stylized drawings and patterns and just a crazy whimsical world at time with cute doodle creatures and what have you. And this is me. And I draw on my observation and things I love in nature and in the world, though I've got a good visual memory and I've got a good visual dictionary to help me with that. If you want to know more about my visual dictionary or my Zibaldoni, I have mentioned it in previous videos. Don't think I've done one on it, but I'll show you. Just leave a comment and I'll show it briefly in the next video. Okie dokes, on to shells, because I will waffle on for hours. Yesterday, if I go back to this page, basically we drew a shell like this and a spirally shell which isn't on there because it's on this page. So it's this one and this one. The black lines are because I drew on the drawing to show how I work out how to draw something. Now, here I'm doing it with pen so you can see it, but in my mind I'm going through this process, maybe not in words, but I'm sort of like I'm working out how my hand would move around. So for this one, this is easy. It's this kind of wobbly circle. See, for nature, wobbly is fine. And how the lines would work and everything else. It's a case of, it is imagining how you would make your pencil move. But the first step is always to start with a shape that you can build on. This one, it's that outline. For this, it was this sort of triangular shape. And it is a kind of triangle. If you just draw it on its own, you can see that there's a very, not straight-sided, the sides curve outwards, and then we've got, they don't curve outwards, they curve inwards and out. And then this one, it just curves outwards to get that kind of shape. Ginkgo leaf, ginkgo leaf. It's amazing how much that shape occurs in nature. With a spiral shell, I could have chosen to draw on the outline, but in my experience, I found it difficult to start from the outside working in. So I prefer to start with a spiral and work out, and then look at how the end of my spiral will connect to the shell to close it off. And then everything else, you can either take the pattern from the shell that you can see, as I've done here. With these, I looked at up and down lines to separate these sections into segments. Or, in my case yesterday, I added tangle patterns in the sections here. And in my shell here, I actually used deviantArt. So that's yesterday's video. So today, I need to pick another shell. Ooh, what one shall we do? I think we're going to do this one here. I did talk about it briefly yesterday, a different one, but this one's got quite a lot of contrast or different colours, and it's easy to see the patterns here. And so I'm going to start as I did yesterday by taking a pen, doesn't matter what size, I've got an 03, and I'm just going to have a look at the basic shape here. And yet again, the basic shape is a triangle, but this is long and thin, or tall and thin. We've then got a shape that goes like this at the end. So it is a curved line, but the top of the curve is closer to one side than the other. We've then got this space here, and it comes around like this. And then we've got all of these sections, and the sections are variations of this. We can put the lines in where we want to split them up, and then go back and draw the bumps around the outside. But I'm going to draw that first triangle in on my paper. And I'm not trying to draw it exactly the same length, same width or anything. I'm just trying to get the basic shape down. So that's my triangle. Excuse me. Then I want to connect these two areas together. So I want to have this kind of shape going on here. So it connects to the triangle like that. This then comes down, around and up to here. Perhaps a little bit more like that. And then I've got a hole in here, which is actually quite slanted, and that then gives me that kind of shape here. And perhaps I do need that going over there and that coming down. So that's my basic start. I'll leave that as it is for now. I think this actually needs to be a little bit more squashed. I can come back to that and put some detail in later on. The next step is to get the first of these bumps in, really. Bumpy sections. So my first one will be like that, and then I'm just going to split this up with shapes like this, because they sort of like bend upwards. They're not perfectly horizontal. I don't know if you can see, but they start lower on this side than the other. And they do get closer together towards the bottom, but I'm not going to try and fit all of those in. I think I may be optimistic getting that last one in there. And then I'm just going to connect them with fairly shallow lumps and bumps. They do need to curve back onto the one above, like so. And for this one, I have done it all in pencil because it's a bit more challenging. And you know, even I find these kinds of shells a bit more challenging, so pencil's fine to begin with. Now what I am going to do is I'm going to take my kneadable eraser and I'm just going to use it to roll across the surface just to lighten that pencil a little bit. And it also means that when I ink it in, when it comes for me to erase the pencil, then it's a lot easier to do, and it also, there won't be so much graphite stuck underneath the ink, so the ink won't lift, because it does stop the ink from sinking into the paper properly. Okay, so I'm going to start with this shape on the top, So this is where I can really think about the kind of shape I want, and I do want it with a bit more of a pointy bit there. And here, I think I want it so it's a bit more like that. Okay, so now we can start doing our bumpy sections. Start with the first one, then the next one, the next one, the next one. This looks so much better when I've drawn it in pencil, isn't it funny? And yet I'm going over all the, well, not quite exactly the lines, but close enough. So that makes a start, and it looks very flat. In fact, if anything, this one is a bit bumpier around the edges than the original one. Now, if I go back to this image, I can see there are stripes round here. So I'm going to make use of that to pop in stripes underneath each of these sections. I'm not going to put more than that in because this is a stylized version of this shell and it doesn't need to be exactly the same. So I can see that there are stripes underneath. It's not a very good image, you know, sort of expanded further than I should have on my print, you know, for printing, but it's fine. And there are others underneath which you could put in, or you could make use of them if you want to add shadow with pen. The other thing I am going to do is I can see here there's a darker area inside here that comes like that. And I know there's an even darker area in there. It most probably isn't visible on the camera, but it's almost that I could pop that in like so. And there's also kind of a dip around here. But I don't think I'm going to put that in, shall I? I'll try it in pencil and see how I feel about it. Yeah, I think I like it just as it is there. Don't think I need that. I can deal with that or work with that when it comes to adding shadow. So before I do anything else, I'm just going to erase my lines here. There we are, and clean it up completely, which is always a nice thing to do. Now then, I think what I'll do, just uncap my pen. I can see what I've done. This slopes down and up. It's got a sharper down and up slope. But I think I'll leave that one plain and I'll just draw another one in. Oh gosh. Well, that's okay because I'm going to go with it. And see how it works out. Perhaps not quite like that. This is a chunker-munker, but you can see I'll work with it. So there's my top section. I need this in. That's nice. I think this one comes up. The larger you draw something, the easier it is to get all the detail you want in. And with this one, I'm going to fill this bottom one in black on this particular version. I think I will here, because I do want that to be the darkest. Okay, so here, this is where we have our first bump. Like so. I'm trying to use the lines of the triangle as the guide for how far the bump goes out. It's not crucial if you miss it. Nobody's going to notice once the pencil lines have gone. And try not to press too hard with your pencil because it does make it harder to erase the lines. And using a softer pencil like a 2B really does help. And 2Bs are really good for shading, although I prefer something darker if I'm using a graphite pencil. I say this, that graphite pencils aren't my favourite for shading. It always looks a bit grubby to me. But that's just my personal preference. It's whatever you like to do is going to work for you. It's your art. I'm not saying that graphite's bad, not by a long shot. But I am going to pop this in here, I think. And I might do just another one there. Perhaps a tiny one there, just to put some interest in that top section. Okay, so I've got two here. Plain one. Let's do some shadowing on that. So excuse me for a moment while I just grab. Yeah, I've got that. Got a different paper stump to the one I had yesterday. So there will be shadow along the edge. I'll come back and do those sections underneath once I've put this in for these. I don't want a single faint line, but I don't want it too broad either. But you can see what I'm doing here is that I am going back to the larger sections and just widening the area of shadow, because I'm trying to think the shadow would start off quite wide because we've got quite a big section there, and it'd be quite narrow towards the bottom. And I'm going to do the same kind of thing on the other side. I'm going to pop some shadow right underneath there, and some shadow underneath that bit, underneath here, just a bit along there. Because underneath that double line is where I'm going to pop some shadow initially. There. And then we've got this area of shadow that goes around here. It's slightly more shadowed. I'm trying to work out from the photograph where it would be darkest, and I think it'd be darkest towards the centre. Okay, let's have a looky and see if this will work. I prefer something that's got a finer point on it than this one, but it may be fine. No, the aim isn't to fill the whole section with graphite, it's just to get the darkest shadows at the edge. It's to smooth the graphite out, work it into the paper fibres a bit, but also to feather out the edges a bit so we don't have a harsh line there. That's one of the advantages of using graphite over something like, say, my favourite alcohol markers, is you have to work with different colours to not get that harsh edge, and sometimes a colourless blender to fade the edge out even a bit more. Whereas with graphite you do it in this kind of way. And I'm no expert at this. I'll tell you, I'm not an expert at anything. I just know what works for me. And if by showing that it helps you, or trying to explain what I'm doing, it helps you, then great. I am just putting a bit of shadow right at the bottom of the highlighted section here, because that highlighted section would be raised up and that bit at the bottom would just be that little bit lower down. Now these sections in between are going to be in quite a bit of shadow, because I think they are almost like dips that go inwards. So that means we have to use a lot more graphite. We want it darker there to suggest that not a lot of light's getting into these cracks. And with this one I will make the highlights mostly disappear. Mostly. I'm going to leave a hint of it there, but it's going to be a lot more subtle than the others. And so that really feels that we've got, it really does feel like these hump up and then are really carved away in there. And it gives you that very dimensionality. You could put a drop shadow underneath as well. I'm not going to do drop shadows today. But the other thing that needs shadow is this section here. And this is where the ability to add really dark graphite comes in. Because I want this to be quite dark around the black, but not so dark in this area. And I'm just going to go back to this and just try to ease that graphite around this just a little bit. I want to leave a bit of a highlight though, because I want to feel that there's a raised edge here. That falls away from. And again, this isn't dark enough for my liking. So I'm going to add some more graphite. Just blend it in. So hopefully that looks like we've got a hole going inside the shell. That's where the creature would come out and eat and do whatever it does. So we've got that. Now then, the inks on this one will be dry, so let's just remove the pencil. So this one I'm going to do a couple of things in a different way with this that you can try. So the first thing I'm going to do in this top section, and perhaps the second one down, is I'm going to use pen lines to add some more shading. So I'm using a finer pen. This is an 01. I was drawing with an 03. So there's not a lot of difference between them. And I'm not too worried if the lines aren't perfect. But what I want to do is to have them fading off towards the centre, but more dense towards the edge. I will turn this round because if I go this way, you might notice that I can get the ink to sort of like become less even, and splotchier, the line becomes more broken as I flick it in this kind of direction, so it helps me to fade the ink or the line out. So I'm putting a shadow in this way, but I'm not trying to colour this in all black. I'm trying to just add, I'm quite happy with the texture because this kind of texture mimics the lines that are in the pattern. The other thing is that you try to get the lines to follow the shape of the curve. It doesn't have to be perfect because you can always go back in and intensify some of the main ones, and then the others will look like they follow in, or you've done some cross hatching. So that's another way. I'll do the next section. That's an awkward section to do. Some cases I have to go and try and lengthen some of the lines a little bit, perhaps. So I've got my basic lines down here, and I'm just going to put one layer of lines there. So that actually works quite nicely. It's not as intense as this one. In fact, I can see that this needs just a few more lines there because it was looking paler where it should look darker. So that works, and to intensify you just draw shorter lines where you want the shadow to be greater, and again allowing it to fade or you know, the intensities to blend together. You don't want that harsh line. So you just work at it. So that's one way of doing that, of adding volume and texture. No pencil needed, just pen. And I quite like this. I like the graphic nature of it. It does take a bit of time and practice, but, you know, nobody gets something right the first time they do it, regardless of what they might suggest or imply. You know? Sort of like Michelangelo wasn't born being able to sculpt. He wasn't born with sculpting tools on his hand and went straight to it with a block of marble to create, is it David? His famous one. You know, it took him a long, long time to hone his skills and practice them. You know, so it's the same for all of us. You know, that's why it's important to keep a sketchbook, because a sketchbook is a way of looking back at where you started and your progress and the journey you make and the choices you make and how you finally hone in on what you enjoy doing most. And then you change it because you start learning new things, and it changes over time. So these sections we can also fill in with pattern. So I'm going to do that in a couple of the lower ones, because this will be finding its way into my sketchbook. Yeah, I've gone back to cutting a piece of paper to a size that will fit the sketchbook page, and I'll fix it in once this is complete. It's really awkward to draw in that particular sketchbook. It's a great sketchbook. It's got tons of pages in it, but it's a pain. So I'm going to draw this in. I'm using the O1 still. And rather than colour these in black, I'm just going to shade them in with some lines. Now with patterned sections, we can go back and add graphite, which I will do in a moment. So here I've got these shapes pointing downwards, but on the next section, let's have a look about what happens if I have them pointing upwards and see which I prefer. I do like this as a filler pattern. I think I've said this before, I've got a few patterns that I seem to settle on an awful lot to fill spaces in. And I return to them time and time again. And I don't think that's, well, I know it's not a problem, it's just, I suppose it's my signature, almost. By the combinations of filler patterns and the way that I draw things, the way that I stylise things, or the combination of different kinds of things in my art, whimsical and patterns and textures and stylised drawings, hand lettering now, then it becomes your signature as to how you do that. Even though other people may be doing something similar, it's the combination of things you use and the way you put them together, which with me isn't very organised, but it seems to work at times. No forethought or planning. So that's quite nice. I really want to do, another favourite of mine is Shattuck, but here I've curved the lines instead of having straight lines on this one, and curved them in a different way to the usual way. I've got these kinds of pointy arches. So these are more Romanesque arches, these are Gothic. So we can go that way, and then that feels better, popping it in like that. So that's quite fun. I could, and I'm going to, pop a stripe in here, because that means then I can fit some strings of perk. Which I like this as a filler pattern. I'm putting the a holist perk right in the centre and having the other ones tucked behind. And it just brings that up naturally. And as the perks go towards the edge, they get smaller naturally, so it sort of begins to start to add dimension. I'm going to do some, use zip. I think it's zip, or is it doodah? I think it's doodah. There, with the lines, and I'm bending the lines to follow the contour of these sections. And this one, I'm just going to fill it with lines and a dot for the highlight. If I can fit a dot in, if not. Okay, for this section, I want this to be really quite dense with ink, so I'm going to fill it with tiny little circles. Very quickly, I'm not making much of an effort to be terribly neat with them. I'm just filling this in for density of ink. So this is a little bit lighter than this one. And then I'm going to carry on with circles, but here I'm going to make them a bit bigger. So there's more space, less ink. So it creates a lighter section. I could have separated these in hindsight with a border, you know, sort of like I've done here, but I think this works with the lines in. And then this very last section, I'm going to put some really big circles in that still add some ink, but there's more white and less ink. So we've got that there. So we've got that. The shade is the same kind of shading as this, but I've done it with pen instead of pencil. And for these, I think I'm going to do, because they remind me of Polygon shapes, and I think the classic way of completing Polygon is to do these two kinds of leaf shapes in the corner, here and here. And I'm just going to put black there and perhaps put a single black dot in the middle. Oh, that looks like eyes now. So, and here I can do the same. This one just there. So that worked out quite nicely. The other thing I'm going to do to this before I add any shading is I'm going to use a thicker pen. I've got an 05 here. Because the other thing that can really help with dimension is thickening the lines where you want the darkest area. So I'm thinking about doing these lines thicker to the left and the bottom. But mainly with these, it's making the lower part here thicker, and we need to go under these sections here and thicken these lines a bit, if I can. Okay. With these, because this will be lower, we want the thicker lines to the top and the right. And the same here. And I'm just going to increase that thickness of the line there. Okay, and these inner lines here, I do think there would be some extra shadow here perhaps. I could actually fill them in completely black if I wanted to and just leave a highlight, but I'm not going to. So let me have a look. I'm going to take some graphite. This will kill me to do this. because graphite on the top of pen. I will add some to this section. This is a Faber-Castell Pitt Graphite Matte Pencil. Ordinary graphite pencils are quite shiny, and the softer they are, the shinier they look because there's more graphite in them. Graphite's an element, a mineral, if you will, and it's grey in colour, and it feels so slippery, and it's used in as a lubricant in engines and machinery that run at very high temperatures. And it is shiny. It feels amazing in your hands. Ex-science teacher handled lots of things. Some things I never should have, like mercury at one time. But, you know, this is what you do. The names of science and the rules over things have changed. But it's got a shiny nature. So when you've got graphite in pencils, that graphite's going to reflect light. It's going to be shiny. And you get a shininess with the graphite, which dulls down the colour of the ink. You either have to put the graphite down first and try and draw on top of it, or you just work with the graphite and accept it for what it is. But these matte graphite pencils are designed to reduce that shininess of the graphite. It doesn't get rid of it completely, but they are noticeably a lot more matte. So I'm not so averse to using them when it comes to adding shadow. And here I'm going to focus on putting shadow underneath this section, to the left, a little bit to the right, just to add this. And I'll do the same here, where I'm adding the shadows here, a little bit there, and perhaps a little bit at the bottom, but definitely under there. I really want to get that to work. I've worked out why these feel weird at times and scratchy and hard. It's because the ink on the paper. Same here, I'm going to just add the graphite to these areas where I want there to be the main part of the shadows. This is what I'll do first, and then I'll decide if I want to add shadows to the individual patterns, or whether I'm just going to leave them as background noise, as it were. Now, those perks are challenging because I really did want to get shadow above and below them, and of course I'm using a tortillon here, or paper stump, that is rather broad, but let's see. Worst comes to the worst, I can use my eraser to try to remove some of the graphite from the centre. Failing that, I can use a white gel pen. Nice thing about kneadable erasers, you can knead the point of them, or knead them into a point or a fine edge, so you can control where you remove the graphite from. So I'm just cleaning up bits here just to bring those highlights out. We've got this section here to do, and I am going to increase the amount of shadows around the edges, like so. And it's gone all one shade of graphite, but that's where this can come in. I can just help to lift some up. So that's really created that sense that we've got a hole there. And with these, I'm going to pop the graphite on these top and bottom, or top and to the right, because that, when it's blended, will make it feel that we've got these areas deeper down, as if there's a hole there. And that's it. Pick and choose how ornate you make them. I noticed I haven't added any graphite to these white sections, but that's fine, because if I did that, everything will become much of a muchness. And I'm not quite sure how I'll approach those, but I'm using them really as a way of separating patterns. But it's all, I sometimes feel when I look at things like this, I think, oh, I could touch this and I could feel those, you know, you've got that sense that you can feel the texture of, or the shapes of it, the volume of it when you look at it. No drop shadows. I'm just going to leave it as it is. And you can see the difference that using pen to add pattern makes. The fanciful as these patterns are, that pen adds that contrast, that high contrast that we don't have here, even just by adding the hatching lines or the textural lines. Increases that contrast. It makes it almost shine in comparison here. Don't get me wrong, this is dimensional, and if anything I could most probably go back with the graphite pencil and I can add even more graphite to the edge by pressing a bit harder, adding some more in and increasing the contrast more. It is about layering as you need to. I do like a bit of layering. I do. So that's increased the contrast there. But you're never going to get it as much as a black pen, because graphite will, no matter how dark the graphite is, it's never, I don't think it's ever completely black. Sometimes it gets black. Use charcoal, you could get a really rich black, but it's so messy. I hate charcoal. Charcoal pencils are fab. Stick charcoal, I get it everywhere. Yeah, I don't like mess. That's also why alcohol markers appeal to me. And of course, you can add colour on the top of this. There's nothing to stop me using water-soluble media on here, because the pen I've used is waterproof, graphite is waterproof, and the graphite will show through the colour. Have I got anything quickly I can show you that with? Yep, most probably. Let's have a look. Just very, very quickly. Oops. As you hear me rattle and make a noise. Oh gosh, I've got to have a brush pen here somewhere. What have I done with that then? Oh, this could be a disaster. You know that, don't you? Disaster, Ange. What have I done with my brush pen? Where is my pink pencil case? It's there. Fingers crossed I can find a brush pen. A water brush is what I mean, not a brush pen. There's not one there. Okay, that idea seems to be scuppered. Though I do have... Yeah, didn't pop one over there, did I? No, I haven't got one there. Well, that's bizarre. Wonder what I've done with them then. Okay, I have got a brush. I've got some really scuzzy water. No, it smells okay. All right, and I've got a piece of plastic. It's basically a ruler. It'll do. Okay, what colour would I like this to be? Should we go with Shelley colours, or shall we go with Angela favourite colours? Ooh, let's go with an Angela favourite colour. This is lime green. And I'm putting it on here because I know from experience with these, this is a Carin Pro marker, or Brush Marker Pro, sorry. They stick to the paper a lot, so if I take some of this green and I start to add it in with a damp brush, it is picking up some of the graphite, the loose graphite, but or it may be some of the ink that hasn't dried properly. But I can add this colour over the top, and I'm just paying attention to where the colour would be the most intense. And then I'm just going to use the back of my hand to wipe the excess ink off and pick up some fresh water. So I only want just a damp brush for this. But I can also remove some of the colour where I want the highlights a bit more. and we can preserve those highlights. So the graphite underneath always makes me think of this being quite metallic. May not be to everybody's taste, but I think this is the reason that I would use metallic colours, not metallics, graphite, because of that metallic-y nature you get. Let me just pick some of that up. Backs of hands are great when you haven't got any tissue handy. Okay, let's have a look here. Now, if I'm careful with these, I should be able to get darker colour top and bottom, perhaps not this time. And leave quite a light highlight in the middle. But I've got a feeling I'm going to have to go back to these smaller sections and use a damp brush just to pick some of that colour up, to lighten it, which is the beauty of water-soluble media. In this one, I think, around the top, just add some green here. And I guess I'm going to have to pop some colour in this section as well, to have it tying in with all the others. So, and then, I've got to decide another colour I'm going to use with that. Go for I think I've got this colour here, which is, this is turquoise. That'll be quite nice with that lime green, I think. Put quite a bit of it down on my ruler. I don't need that much, I don't think, but we'll see. Just think it might be nice for these darker sections. It's a sketchion, which is part of a sketch. There we go. I'm going to come back when that's dry and just darken it up a bit more by adding some more of the pigments. Here I'm adding pigment and leaving a gap because I'm going to come back with a damp brush to just blend this out. And the thing is about sketchbooks as well, and working in this kind of way, is that even if you don't like the result of what you've created, I mean, here's me using colour. It's always a bad idea. Traditional colour, anyway. Because once I've put it down, I can't change it. Digital art, I can always go back and change it. Which makes me very happy. And I can settle down on a colour scheme then. So there, I've just added some darker colour to the darker sections. And here I'm just going to fill these in as well, because I think the darker colour also suggests that things are in shadow. And while I'm at it, shall I put a drop shadow in? No. Nope, 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 no. Not going to do that. That's it. I've done that now. Done. Leave it. But the graphite does show through, as does the other bits and bobs. So, how well have we done today? Colour does make a difference, doesn't it? It really, really does. Just pop those markers out the way before I do something disastrous, and that ruler before I do something even more disastrous. So it's this shell has become this. And so just in a recap, started off with the picture. So if you've got the ability to print things out, do, because you'll be able to work on the print. If you've got your own photos, even better. But it's fine. I think these are copyright free or royalty free, so it's okay. And just look at the shape and just draw around the outside. Try and keep it as simple as you can. So far I've chosen things that are basically made up of one shape. Basically. We'll have a look at something a bit more complicated tomorrow, like one of these shells, which has, sections in it, which I'll come back to. And it's fine. You've got a basic shape, but it's easier if you split that up into smaller sections again. And then start looking at that basic shape. With this, it was that triangle shape. Then we looked at how the top would go together, how we made that opening and filled that in. And then we looked at these lumps and bumps going down, how we've got lines that separate them and made use of those. And it doesn't have to be an exact copy. Think about whether you just want to add shading so it looks like this, or if you're going to add pattern. If you're going to want to add pattern, you might want to broaden the triangle a bit and make these sections wider so you've got more space to draw in. Because who's to say there's not one of these in this kind of shape? And it also can be a matter of perspective, what angle you're looking at the shell from and the way that it foreshortens or doesn't. Well, everything foreshortens. Foreshortening is that appearance of, depending on the angle you're looking at something, it can look shorter than it really is, or sometimes even longer. It's for lengthening, I suppose. Okay. And then it's a matter of inking in. Pencil sketch, because if you make a mistake, you can change it, you can adjust the line shapes, you can draw over them until you're happy with it. I lightly erase a lot of the graphite before I ink in, usually. Then I ink in, then I decide what to do next. And with this one, I just added graphite to bring out the structure and the shadow. And that's also a good reference for future work, because I used this as a guide for where I would put darker areas on this one. It's thinking about where is the shadow. The image I chose doesn't really have a shadow on it at all. So you're not going to get confused by the image and trying to work out where the shadows are there. It's working out logically, using almost a formula for it, to the left and underneath, to the bottom, to where things overlap, to the left and the bottom. Where I want things to appear, they are further away or falling away. If I want something to look like it's sunk in, like it's hollowed out, then I reverse where the shadows are, to the top and the right. And then it gives that feeling of something having fallen inside. Show you, because it hasn't. Hopefully I can show you. Hopefully I can find the sketchbook I was working in earlier today. Yes, there we go. Yep, I've already been drawing. I've been awake since just before 6 o'clock. I went to bed early, so I woke up a bit earlier. So this is what I did. Morning drawing and lettering. I did actually do drawings. But can you see where I've put the shadows here compared to the letters? Well, it depends how you view it. It's sort of like, it can either appear that these are standing upwards and this section is sunk into the paper, or it can appear the other way. It's one of those weird optical illusion-y things. But here it distinctly does look like we've got those letters are raised up, but we've got a border around it that's raised up as well. So we've got these areas are further back. And yeah, I'm going to add colour to this because I like this. And that might be my task for today. Maybe. Show you quickly. So this I did last night while I was had the television on and was too tired to do much else, but not tired enough to sleep yet, if that makes sense. So I was drawing and I finished it off this morning, and it says, so tired, wedi blino lan. Wedi blino is tired in Welsh. Lan means very tired. Wedi blino lan. Lan is exhausted. I don't take me literally on that one. And I'm not sure I've spelt Lan right, L-A-N. I'm going to have to check on that, but it doesn't matter. It's my sketchbook. Exhausted I am. Wobbly lines are us tonight, and they were wobbly lines. I got so tired and my lines got really wobbly. But just a bit of fun. Yeah, and it goes all whimsical here, you know. I'm looking into another world. Stars. I don't know what these are. That's a Zentangle pattern called Fleavy. For some reason I needed to draw it. So to go back to shadows, I stick to a formula to the left and then the bottom or underneath where things are overlapping, and to the top and right where I want things to appear that they are deeper, sunk down. I can enhance that if I lift some of this colour up, which I may do later on. I've tried different patterns out here. I think I really like the lines on this, the pen lines instead of the graphite shading. I just think that it adds that contrast, that high contrast that I like. And when I add colour, it looks almost metallic now. But I also like, I like this one, and I think I might fill those inner sections with black to get some more contrast going. This one, I think, so I said I was going to go and it was going to be a quick roundup. I think that if I thicken the outer lines of these, that gives some structure. And again, perhaps the bottoms of these need to be thicker lines as well for that shadow and that dimension. And let's have a look. Oh, wobbly lines are us still today. So I can compare and contrast. See, I do like that one for its graphic nature. The other one's okay. Those thicker lines have helped, and with that, and I could use some graphite or colour then to bring some shadow and get dimension working with that. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it's given you some things to think about. Oh, white gel pen. That would be not necessary here, but would be pleasant to add, you know, to increase the highlights in places and to focus, you know, especially on these perks. They'd be great with a little dot of white. But I'm going to leave that for now, and you'll see it most probably tomorrow because I'll work on this paper tomorrow. So thank you for joining me. I hope this has been a useful, dare I say lesson or tutorial? I hope so. And that you'll have a go at drawing shells like this and try widening them, shortening them, making them wider and longer. So basically you're increasing the size, changing how many sections you've got in there, whether you put pattern in the dividing areas or not, using pen, colour. Just see where it leads you. It's all practice, and practice makes improvement. Never perfect, but always improvement. And hopefully you'll get to good enough, which is, and not good enough as in good enough forever, good enough for where I am here and now. So take care, enjoy your day, and above all else, find some time to be creative. And I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.